Navigating broadband surety supply in a data center boom. My name's Ryan O'Sullivan. I've been at AFL for about 10 years, currently serve as the Director of Broadband Ecosystem Development, is part of our market development team. Better part of the last 5 years I've spent in the rural fiber to the home business for AFL. So surety supply for broadband is near and dear to my heart, and happy to jump in and get started talking about it here in just a second. A little housekeeping note, you should see on the top right of your screen, most likely, a box that's got a question mark in it. If you have any questions, or I would also say comments, if you don't mind putting them there, we'll be monitoring those as we go. So happy to do that. There'll be time for Q&A at the end, so I'll address there unless I see something that needs to be clarified as we go. So without further ado, again, thanks for joining, and we'll jump in. Wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time level setting just kind of what's been going on in the news. There's been no shortage of information about different things involving AI, data center, broadband, fiber demand, and everything that affects the group in our ecosystem. And I know joining us today, we've got other manufacturers, we've got service providers, we've got distributors, we've got other AFL employees. So I think this is relevant to everybody. Things that pop up: AI boom drives demand for fiber data center infrastructure. I think that goes without saying, but everything going on in data center AI is driving fiber. Yesterday announced Meta entered a big partnership for $6 billion with a cable provider, part of their building data centers across the U.S. Verizon, major service provider. We can see that over time, several things are happening with Verizon. They're accelerating their fixed wireless growth. As they do that, that's going to double from about 4.5 to about 8 or 9 million in fixed wireless, as they also grow their fiber passing steadily over time from today through 2028 in the future. AT&T has long stated they've got a goal to be from 30 million to 60 million fiber locations by 2030. So what this sets up is an ecosystem to where there's tremendous demand for fiber. There is, and it's coming from multiple places. It's coming at the same time. It's coming from AI. It's coming from hyperscale, but it's also coming as we have different deployments going on with everyday broadband fiber to the home, with BEAD coming online, other things. So. Jumping in, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when a data center comes online. We see the announcements often. To run AI, there's got to be a data center backing it up, storing all the data, exchanging data. What does that really mean? And a part of the data centers I want to talk about is not the data center themselves, but how those data centers connect. Because when a data center comes online, it exponentially increases the need for cable and for fiber to connect it to other data centers. So it's not just a one-for-one connection. In addition to that, a big part of data centers coming online is redundancy. You can't be in a situation to where one line gets cut and it takes out a whole network of data centers. So redundancy is important. So we're not just connecting things one time, we're connecting them multiple times throughout the data center. So in addition to really super high fiber count cable that's going on inside a data center, you've got some fairly large cables connecting outside of it that's taking up a lot of cabling capacity. In terms of fiber kilometers, what I want to point out about this graph is that somewhere in the 2026-2027 range, we're going to see the demand for fiber kilometers be higher from the hyperscale and data center interconnect market than what it is in our traditional broadband market. So what you see on the right are, tier 1 demand. You see MSO demand. You see the spike there associated with, with maybe BEAD projects coming online, also with some of the interconnect that traditional service providers are participating in. But there's a really big jump of demand from the hyperscalers for fiber. So this is, whereas DCI was purely, well, not purely, but a cable play plus a fiber play, this is showing the overall fiber volume of consumption going on in the market due to this. So a lot of fiber being demanded, a lot of it being demanded by very few customers that are not necessarily part of the traditional broadband market. Trends and timelines. So at the same time, there's a lot going on, and what I want to say about this slide and about this chart is these things aren't necessarily a hard start, a hard stop on these timelines. This is just really, they're really kind of at their peak. So we have a scenario where data center interconnect for the next 10 years is going to be running strong. We have 5G that is going to build out probably until about 2030, giving over to 6G. Obviously, 6G may start a few years earlier than that. 2028 is a year that gets batted around a lot for that. But the changeover from 5G to 6G is probably going to be around 2030. Obviously, the demand for fiber, the demand for cable, for connecting antennas, part of that. There's certainly debate about how much 6G is going to require from fiber, but it's still part of what's going on. Fixed wireless and coax, I think those sort of go in concert because an interesting thing, we see Verizon showing growth both in fixed wireless and in traditional fiber to the home. We also know, I was at a conference back in November, AT&T was presenting at it. They were talking about their growth from 30 to 60 million, but also how their AT&T Air fixed wireless service is outperforming what they even expected at this point in time. Some of that is because as coax systems become sunset, they're not necessarily replaced by these providers immediately with a fiber setting. Some of that's a fixed wireless. Maybe a tier one's removing a coax system, and there's already fiber in place. So it doesn't make sense for them to immediately run more fiber. You have fixed wireless taken off. Fiber to the home, we've got that running pretty strong through 2030, 2031. Doesn't mean it stops altogether after that. There'll still be some builds, but that sort of sunsets in timeline with some BEAD projects, other large projects that should be timing out around then. And then kind of in the end, the edge, the data center, part of what stands up, the drive to low latency, getting things faster. It's going to be moving to the edge. It's going to be moving to the data center. Overlying all that's AI, and I think that's something to drive home is that all of the things going on in the market right now have some type of interwoven connection to AI. Some very directly, some a little bit less so. But I'll bring up fixed wireless for a second. For AI to truly work, the upload and download speeds have to be the same. Fixed wireless maybe can't do that totally right now. Do I think they'll probably have some technology growth, be able to get there? And probably. Fiber right now is the way that can definitely do that. But AI is probably going to impact fixed wireless over time. It's going to impact 6G, certainly impacting DCI fiber to the home because fiber is able to support it now. I want to talk for a minute about BEAD. Obviously, it's been a topic since 2021. I think as I want to kind of go through here, some of the iterations of BEAD started off with about 15 million unserved, underserved locations, down to about 5 plus or minus now, a little less than that are BEAD eligible. What that's led to is pretty well documented. The expected awards from BEAD going from 40 billion plus or minus to 20 to 25 billion. Another change with that is obviously as part of the benefit of the bargain, the fiber preference became fiber neutral, meaning that about a third of those remaining sites are being serviced by satellite or by fixed wireless. So the play for fiber and all this has gone down as the unserved and underserved locations have shifted and as other technologies have become available. At the same time, all this has been going on over the last few years, AI has experienced exponential growth. Even a company like AFL, looking back 3 or 4 years ago to now, we probably never would have projected the level of growth that is going on, and I think that's kind of true throughout the industry. The timing of all this gets really interesting because I think when BEAD initially came out, if you think back to 2021, we had an environment to where we didn't totally realize at the time, but people were overbuying. There was an inventory glut happening in the market. As all that was going on, the expectation was that would soar into BEAD, and then AI would kind of happen next. What really happened was the inventory glut from BEAD and from broadband sort of showed up in the space. AI caught fire faster than we thought, and AI kind of jumped in line a little bit. So we've seen, the BEAD lagging. We've seen broadband kind of soften. Maybe could also be the inventory glut that's made it look like that. But AI became very attractive to a lot of manufacturers that also participate in the broadband space. I want to talk a little bit about some of the similarities and differences between the broadband and AI markets before I get into kind of what it means for everybody on this call in terms of how to navigate this. The old three-legged stool analogy is one that comes to mind, with quality, lead time, and pricing being the legs for the markets. Both markets are going to certainly demand quality. AI requires as low a latency as possible. System downtime is not acceptable for broadband or for AI. I don't think there's any question that service providers or hyperscalers are gonna want to sacrifice quality for system integrity. Where things I think get a little bit different are lead time and pricing. What we've experienced with lead times in AI is they need it today, they need it tomorrow, they need it next week. Certainly no longer. In broadband, due to project life cycles, we have a little bit of ability to make some preparations, to do some forecasting, and to prepare for future build outs. Certainly there's seasons that are busier for building and busier for planning. So there's a little more flexibility in terms of forecasting with lead times. Pricing is kind of the opposite. Because the hyperscalers in AI and data centers demand the quick lead time, they're a lot less sensitive to pricing. Whereas, as many of you on this call know, for a broadband provider, pricing is very important because you're working towards metrics like take rates. You're looking at the price per passing, things that make the metrics of a decision to build a network work or not work for you. Obviously, pricing is a part of that. There's a lot more expensive pieces like labor and otherwise, but it's something where there's a little more sensitivity. So I think it's important to kind of call out some of the similarities and some of the differences between the markets. So talking about this from a manufacturing perspective, I'm going to go over a manufacturing perspective, then I'm going to talk about a service provider perspective and a partnership perspective, and then a distributor perspective, partnership perspective. And then kind of end with some of the key takeaways for what each of those are. One thing I've noticed is anybody that's participating in the AI data center space right now is experiencing massive growth. Something I did a few weeks ago is I spent some time looking back at some third quarter reportings, not just for AFL, but for some top competitors in the market, understanding what everybody was experiencing. And something that rings true is across the board, year-over-year numbers, quarter-over-quarter numbers, as they relate to growth in the data center space are massively higher. It's a situation where the water level rises and all ships rise with it, and that's something that we're seeing, and I think we'll continue to see. Another interesting thing that's been a little bit of an eye-opener, I think, for the manufacturing side of our industry is the biggest suppliers in the broadband space are also the biggest suppliers in the data center, but we're dealing with the largest companies in the world. Are we used to dealing with large companies? Of course. I mean, there's, our tier ones, lots of MSOs are extremely large customers in the United States. But the money behind these companies, the desire to, if you don't solve the problem, we'll solve it, is a little bit different. And great example. One of the biggest problems data centers are trying to solve has to do with energy, and they're working with whether it be electric co-ops or IOUs to solve an energy problem. They're already trying to figure out, well, if these guys can't solve it, how are we going to build our own generation for power to solve it ourselves? So it's a little bit of a different world. It's been enlightening, I think, for a lot of manufacturers. I think too, something that at least I'm not used to, but it's something that we've seen a lot over the last 6 to 9 months, and from what I've picked up at different industry events, our fellow competitors are seeing as well, is there's a lot of conversation going on internally about what business is attractive. It's a different environment. Business that may have been attractive a year ago may be less attractive now. It's sort of the difference between, can we fill an order, can we take on a project, can we do something, or should we, has become a key distinction. I think that for a lot of people in the industry, there's a lot of things we can do, and in the past have done. Now the should we is becoming a little bit of a different question. So that's something new to us, at least of late, and that's impacting the business. And then kind of the final thought that ties into that is transactional business is a lower priority. I've been surprised at business that AFL's been involved in or been chasing for periods of time. Opportunities lately with some of those customers, some of those opportunities have come up, and we found them less attractive, or maybe it just wasn't, with what's going on with some of the other business with AI hyperscale, it's taken a lower priority. So, just selling a product is not necessarily as attractive as it used to be. So what does that mean if you're a service provider joining us on the call today? How do we partner better together? How do we secure surety supply in this landscape? I would, and I'll back up and saying it's a little bit weird to present a slide to service providers and to distributors that are coming up without sounding a little bit preachy. As I thought through this, I'm like, man, this can come off the wrong way. This can come off as play by our rules, and that's not what I mean it to be. I mean it to be kind of an education of what we're seeing at AFL, what I'm seeing, but what I think also the industry's seeing. So this is meant to be helpful. Hope it doesn't come across as negative or preachy. But to be a good partner as a service provider is to look for win-win scenarios and look to be a partner. The reality is suppliers have more options than probably ever right now in terms of how to sell out their factories, how to fill demand in the market. So if you're a service provider, I would suggest that it's important to look for ways to truly partner, find win-win scenarios. Look for people maybe that have either been loyal to you in the past, or if people have walked away from you for whatever reason, or have not been able to service you, look for people that are looking for ways, companies that are looking for ways to develop a long-term stable relationship that involves win-win scenarios. I think another one is knowing your requirements. Certainly BABA's an obvious one that comes to mind, but as you think ahead, an example of being a good partner is to know maybe which of your projects require BEAD BABA compliance and which don't, and not just, hey, ship me everything BABA compliant so I don't have to worry about it. That's probably not as likely to be granted in these days as they would have been a few years ago, as the fiber supply situation sees itself domestically being spread in some different directions. Forecast accurately. This has always been a tough one. It's always been a tough ask for a manufacturer going to a customer. But I can tell you, if you're able to forecast accurately, any manufacturer you're dealing with is going to be able to figure out how to carve out the supply based off of the needs with enough runway to work with you. And I think that's true today, no matter what. I was having a conversation with a major service provider a few months ago. It was a VP of a company, and they were saying that they were talking about one of my competitors that supplies them. And they said, "Man, they're a great supplier as long as we don't ask for more than what we've committed to start a year, or what they've committed to us." And my first reaction to hearing that is, yeah, they're not so great after all. But really, when you think about it for a minute, they are a good supplier, and they are figuring out how to take care of their customers, as long as it's going both ways. And so it's a little bit of a shame on the service provider at that point in time for for not maybe having quite as much foresight as to what they need to help the supplier be successful. And there are certainly periods in cycles of business to where forecasting isn't that important, but as we've kind of overlaid what's going on in the overall market with all of the converging trends we have right now, forecasting supply is extremely important. And then I think know your end goal. Is your goal to get the quickest deployment possible? If so, do you have to be BEAD and BABA compliant, or do you have other options? Is your goal to be the lowest cost per passing, or is it to be deployed faster? What's the real important thing to you in your own three-legged stool? What does that look like? So so just a few thoughts on that. For distributors, we have some distributor friends in the audience. Distributors are near and dear to my heart. I think I said I'd been with AFL for almost 10 years now. The 13 years prior to that in my career, I was a distributor with a little bit different industry, still in the construction industry. But I think I have a pretty good pulse on distributors, how you guys think, how you guys act, and what's important to you. One thing I'd suggest right off the bat, and all of these things I think are always important for distributors, but maybe in this environment a little more so. Number one is know the environment, and there's a few things going on in your environment for sure. One of them that I'll talk about is maybe related to BEAD. I know several distributors that I've worked closely with in the past, in previous roles at AFL. Have been working with suppliers that thought they were BEAD compliant 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, and now they're not. And so that environment's changing. No fault of the supplier, just the way it worked out. Also, you may be in situations to where there could be partners that you've worked with before for a long time that have gotten really busy in some other areas, and maybe they're not giving you quite the allocation you had before. Maybe the partnership's not as strong as you thought. All that to say, what got you to where you are today may require some reevaluation, and I think to go through that wisely, to understand what's the long game, who's going to be there for you, what's the partnership, and also understanding what that's going to mean on a commitment standpoint from your side too. The ask is not all one way; it's both ways on that. Know your customer intimately. I think everything we talked about on the last slide with service providers applies here as you're the vessel for service providers in a lot of cases. You've got to be able to get a forecast from them that allows you to be able to lock in purchases or forecast buckets or whatever it may be to protect their projects in the future, to protect you in the future. Certainly know an inventory and product requirements. Again, same message is with the service providers. It can't be as simple in this environment as a distributor saying, you know what, I'm going to throw my hands up. I don't want to worry about having to figure out segmenting inventory for a customer is BEAD compliant or not BEAD compliant, BABA compliant, not BABA compliant. It's not really an option to just order everything and say, let's just make it all one way. I think what that means for you guys is you have to kind of have some strategy to segment inventory and buy appropriately. Certainly not in the manner that got everybody into the situation in 2020, 2021 with the glut. Certainly not distributors' faults. There were a lot of service providers and end users that were pushing for stock too. But it's important that we all be diligent during this time. Be attractive to manufacturers. It's important for distributors to understand too that manufacturers have more options than what they usually have. As I mentioned, a lot of manufacturers now are dealing with some of the biggest companies in the world, and their trigger is not price. Their trigger is availability. So the AI versus broadband business case for manufacturers gets a little bit complicated. I think it's fair to say for a number of companies, we could probably fill our factories up servicing nothing but data center hyperscalers, but that's not the desire. The desire is to participate appropriately across all the markets that we've always been participating in and do so in a way that's successful. But it's important to understand there's always ways that manufacturers can sell strategically to distributors, and it's important that strategy be involved in this. And I think, what's the business going to look like 5 years from now, right? There's plenty of talk of, is this data center thing just a boom? Is it going to go bust? Is it or is it sustainable? I think manufacturers, I think service providers, I think distributors all have to think about what do things look like 5 years from now. I think, as you've seen on the 10-year timeline I put together earlier in the presentation, that this is going to be a good long run. Time will tell. But I think everybody has to kind of take a measured step to say, how important are we all going to be to each other, not just now, not just next year, but 5 years from now, and what's that going to look like? Kind of summarizing, I wanted to put together a little bit of kind of an ecosystem for service providers, distributors, manufacturers, because we are all relying on each other. What's important for a service provider in this, I think, is to forecast, to understand your strategic significance to your partners, to partner well. I think partner is super important. For distributors, I think it's, continue to know the market. You guys are oftentimes much closer to the market than manufacturers are, certainly in certain segments. Know the market, know your customers, and think about your long-term strategy. I'd imagine that there's, just like we're having conversations in manufacturing about what does the current cycle of business mean, and what's that going to look like long term. I'm sure you guys are as well. I'm sure you're evaluating your own partners, your own customers, and I think that's smart. And I think for manufacturers, and certainly for AFL, is we own just as much of this as everybody else in adjusting, and that's that we have to be smart, we have to be measured, we have to balance the immediate opportunities of today, and the margins that come with them, with long-term partnerships. It's important that manufacturers like AFL and like our competitors not forget about the customers that have brought us to where we are. Whether that be for us, our in the broadband space, the electric co-op industry, tier 2, tier 3s, tier 1s, MSOs, distributors, you name it. It's important that we continue to balance that, and we continue to be good stewards of this market, while also participating in what's going on in broadband, and with what's going on in AI data center in the hyperscale space. So there's certainly something in it for everybody. Some final thoughts, and this will wrap us up probably at about 30 minutes or so, and then I'm happy to take questions in the chat. Number one, partnerships are critical. I hope I've stressed that appropriately in here. It's not a situation where anyone's to blame or to try to take advantage of someone in a situation like we're in today. It's a time to come together as partners, come together as an industry, and be responsible. I've been at several industry events over the last couple of months, and a topic has been, is there going to be enough domestic fiber to meet the BABA requirements, to meet the BEAD requirements? The answer to that is yes, if everybody acts rationally. Is there some danger? Some, but I think as long as everybody communicates well, acts rationally, and really partners, we're okay. The partnership's going to be fine. Global supply. Is there enough global supply to go around if the market behaves rationally? That's a little bit of what I was talking about. This gets into some of the intricacy of where you need U.S. domestic American fiber for certain projects, and where there's other fiber, other things, connectivity that come into play as well. The answer to that question, with all that's going on in this boom, is yes, I believe there's enough global supply, but everybody's got to be communicating and got to be honest about what they're using their supply for, and making sure that where we need certain types of supply, we have it, and we're not utilizing it in areas where we could utilize something else. And then I think the final thing too, and this goes finger right back at us just as much as it does advice to anybody else, is consider what makes you an attractive partner in the ecosystem. Current environment is different than what a lot of us have experienced, at least lately. So at AFL, we have to think about what makes us an attractive partner in the broadband space to the service providers on the call, to the distributors on the call, and that's a question that goes to everybody, because it's important to understand where we are to make sure we're important partners and that we're taking care of each other in this ecosystem. That's all I have. I would encourage you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Happy to take them. So I'll give it a minute to see if anything pops in. Don't see any, and that's fine, but please feel free if you'd like to reach out to me with any questions, or if there's anything on your mind, please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, or otherwise. All right. Thanks a lot, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.